we haven't really discussed the intellectual dark web on this show.
I thought that was supposed to be us.
Yeah, that's right. Except for the dark web is where you find the child pornography and like sex slaves and like illegal shit.
Why did they choose that name for themselves? Actually, I think if anything, that's actually the most disturbing part of the whole thing. Like, I don't really have a I think it's like, so what is it? It was Eric Weinstein who coined the term.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and he puts himself in the intellectual dark web, okay? And he has, all his pal. And I don't think it's unfair, whether or not you think it's a good thing or not. It's definitely a movement that exists. There's definitely, there's these people who have very prominent, mostly podcasts, but other medium, and people listen to them, and it's not quite mainstream, and it's not quite left, and it's not quite right, and whatever. Whatever, fine. But intellectual dark web, yeah, that just sounds like 4chan, right? Like that's just
that's kind of what I think he's leeching off of. Not that it's that whole.
But why would you go there? Why would that be your
because
the badass renegades or some shit? Choose a better name.
It's that rebellious angle, right? Like you it's that almost secret,
because all the cool badass shit is leftist, and they can't be that.
Well, they don't want to be that.
I think, at least in my opinion, it's that not as many people are as computer literate to know about the dark web idea.
I don't know.
And what it
Isn't
actually
that
represents.
well known?
They know that there's this underweb.
I say
It sounds like counterfeiters, and child porn.
Well, that's the thing is everyone knows it exists, but you have to know how to. And
it's not really like a web thing. It's not like a website thing. It's mostly podcasts. Like
speaking tours,
book signings and whatnot. Like, it's not an internet thing. So just maybe some of the listeners haven't heard, but there was a New York Times article a few weeks ago profiling several prominent people who are, I guess, self-identifying as part of the intellectual dark web. So it's not pejorative. It's them describing themselves.
It is now.
Well, it's weird. But anyways, so it's like, I think Eric Weinstein started
your edgy
it.
Teen cousin is part of the intellectual dark web.
Come get your mildly insulting podcast right beside the child porn booth.
Yeah. No, who all was part of it? It was
Sam Harris. Eric Weinstein.
Jordan Peterson.
Dave Rubin.
No, that was before Jordan Peterson.
No, Peterson was in the article. Faux show. Oh, yeah, he was named.
Was he?
Oh, yeah.
Ben Shapiro?
Shapiro. What's his name?
I hate that guy.
Yeah,
that guy's name.
Majid Nawaz.
Rubin?
Which I may know.
Majid Nawaz.
Rubin.
Douglas Murray.
Oh, yeah.
Michael
Ayaan
Sherman.
Hirsi and Christina Hoff Summers.
Oh, you're just looking it up on your giant smartphone.
Cheater! The rest of us are going off memory.
No, good job. Anyways, so, I mean, I think the article is interesting. I mean, it does point out that these people, they don't all hold the same beliefs. They're not all on the same part of the political spectrum. They don't have the same policy ideas. The thing that links them is they have a particularly large interest in free speech and in basically nothing really being off limits to talk about. I think like they're supposed to have an openness to having a conversation, like a rational conversation with anyone about anything.
Unless you're like pro-Muslim.
No, but they'll have a rational, they won't agree with them, but they'll have a conversation.
Well,
that's the idea. That's the idea. Well, I mean, and it also talks about how you're never going to get everyone in a group like that to conform and have this, the same policy, of the same openness and the same. Whatever.
Yeah, they are. I think I got the impression that this was an exercise in self-indulgence, and look how smart this group is. And I kind of got the impression that Bari Weiss figures she's part of this group, whether she's been
the author.
Yeah,
but she talks about it. Like she'd be willing, but not if this is what it means. Like at the very end, if you read to the end, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she was like, I'd almost want to be part of this, but I don't know. Like it honestly is how it reads.
Yeah.
I think it is a legitimate, it is a movement. I think.
How do you officially join the dark?
It's loose. It's described that way as being loose. It's not a official thing.
So it's just like, is it like a bigot scale or something? Like,
no, it's describing.
If you've reached this level of bigotry.
Well, it's describing a movement, like I said, a movement that does not cannot be categorized into, say, mainstream political views or extreme left, extreme right. It's a different, I don't know, different type. But I think that it is a thing because there does seem to be an appetite for it.
Well, there certainly is an appetite for it. Like they speak at sold out venues, and they have millions of downloads on their podcasts.
When is Peterson coming here? He's coming here, isn't he?
August 14th.
He's coming to Saskatoon. Yeah.
No, he's not.
He's coming here too.
Yeah, I know.
Is he coming to Regina too?
Yeah.
Jesus.
As far as I know.
Oh Lord!
What a waste of skin.
Like I would enjoy watching somebody debate him. Maybe somebody smart debate him. But even that, I wouldn't pay. Like I know, like you guys know, I love Sam Harris, and he's going to have a thing with him in Vancouver, I think in June, and I think it'd be interesting because I have enjoyed the interviews Harris has done with him because I'm just like, it just, to me, it just makes Peterson look like an idiot.
Right.
Like, he's like, you're not making sense. And then Peterson's like, blah, 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 bullshit. And then Harris like, but no, you're not. Anyways, it goes on for 4 hours like that. But then I wouldn't pay because I wouldn't want to give Peterson money.
Right.
I don't care if part of it's going somewhere. I just couldn't.
There's going to be protests.
Apparently there's, and I started to watch it, but I didn't finish it, but there is video of Matt Dillahunty.
Oh, yes, actually, and that's a very good discussion.
Yeah.
What did Matt Dillahunty do?
Matt Dillahunty sat down with Jordan Peterson, and they actually discussed religion and belief in God.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of Matt's specialty.
Yeah.
So was this the LSD incident?
Yes. Yeah, he kind of.
What?
Well, not LSD sponsored or anything like that, but they discussed at one point. No, sorry, not LSD, psilocybin. Magic mushrooms, including smoking.
They kind of just talked about, like people who are on mushrooms or drugs have reported supernatural events.
Yep, and they're apparently...
Therefore, that is a thing that happened.
Yes.
Because that's how Jordan Peterson thinks.
Of course. Like, this is the guy who believes dragons and witches exist.
Well, he said something about, like, everything has to come from a belief in God first or something like that.
Yeah,
he's a Christian.
Full-on presuppositionalist.
He claims to not be a Christian, though. He's the same sort of... I think that puts him in the same sort of cultural Christian subset as Sam Harris.
It's actually really... In a sense, it's interesting to hear him talk.
Interviewed.
Because when he was asked if dragons really exist, he believes that dragons exist in a way because... conceptual things exist, like ideas exist. Mm-hmm. So he thinks that therefore dragons are real in the sense that ideas are real.
In truth, and it's really like it's just
basically
mind-boggling.
Go through a 5-minute explanation to create the equivalency of a dragon to a concept, and ergo it exists.
The interesting thing
I'm going to shorthand it as dragons exist, and I want you to know that that's what I actually mean.
So he basically just argued for multiple genders.
Well, yeah, that's right.
He knows that transgender people exist and all that. He just doesn't want to respect them.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, he knows they exist, but he doesn't think that they're actually women.
Right.
Like if you're a transgender woman, you're not actually a woman.
And I mean, I've absorbed as much Peterson as one can absorb without going insane.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But
should we try, Cory?
he has this kind of idea of concepts as reality.
Yeah.
And he translates that, like, it's very much what he imagines postmodernism is, where everybody makes up reality through their ideas and their truth. That's what he thinks actually happens. But then he attacks postmodernism as that thing.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come up with it, even though that's not what postmodernism is. And
oh yeah, this is exactly the same sort of problem he has with a lot of fields that he isn't actually educated in. I have this idea and I think it's wrong. I didn't actually research this, but this is what I think it is, and ergo I think it's wrong.
Yep. It's just, he's an interesting character. Like, if he wasn't real, that would be somebody I could watch on a cartoon or something.
He's like House.
Right.
But not
he's
smart.
like House, but not smart. Yeah.
Or knowledgeable.
No, he has a field. He just has to stick with that field. Like, as far as I can tell, if within his field he's actually accomplished, but that's not where most of this is happening.
the interesting thing is, like, he is accomplished in his field, but not for the last while, because he's been so focused on teaching and his clinical work, and then of course in 2016 he went, I don't know, viral, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you know, one of my friends actually has his book, his psychology book.
Okay,
Maps of Meaning.
He says it's actually really good. Like he said, like as a clinical psychologist, he's really good.
I think that he might be onto something with some of his personality types.
Yeah.
I think that often people like he uses a lot of Jungian type language and ideas.
Apparently, that personality typing thing.
A lot of it's.
Well, he brought this up as a means to hire for certain fields, but it's essentially the only people he's tested it against are his own grad students that none of them could fake it. So he didn't do any like double blind testing.
Well, no. And according to an article in the Star that recently came out, he was turned down for for grants, and then blamed that on leftist bias in academia.
Well, so I think you're thinking of this
speech.
article by Bernard Schiff,
Right?
Who's now retired, but was a professor in the psychology department at U of T, and apparently campaigned to have Peterson hired in the late 90s. He was the one who told the hiring committee, no, we should totally go for this guy. And now the article is fascinating because it's called, I was Jordan Peterson's strongest supporter. Now I think he's dangerous. So actually, honestly, I think that title is sort of that headline is sort of, I don't know, inflammatory, but it's great articles. It's quite long. But he talks about how, Peterson wouldn't submit to ethics board approval, which is basic in a study involving humans, and he just wouldn't do it. And he was like, I shouldn't have to. I know if my stuff is ethical more than you could ever know. And it's like, this is literally the law. Like you can't just be like, I'm not doing that. Like it's not a thing.
I read that and I felt like the subtext of the article in the lowbrow version is like, fuck. He was okay.
I really do get the idea that he is, whether he means to or not, has the mentality of a cult leader.
And he's a narcissist. Like he really he's so into himself. Like
he thinks he has the exact interpretation. And
he's also he's so hard done by. So I read the blog post that he wrote because he'd said in a New York Times interview, he'd said something about how one thing that would prevent incels from existing would be enforced monogamy. Right. And so he wrote a blog post clarifying it. So he says that what he actually believes in is socially enforced monogamy, meaning like that society should have pressures to keep relationships monogamous.
You mean like they do now?
Yeah, which is the society. I know, but he believes that he wants he's kind of like a return to 1950s sort of, not Mad Men, but that's 1960s, but like
no, that's too sexually open.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no. But he really wants or anyway, he's advocating for this as a. And the thing is, he plays games, and this article in the Star really points this out. Like he splices words, and he says one thing, and and doesn't, and he passes off things that are conjecture as truth.
Right.
Like for example, in that blog post, he cites articles, looked at them. None of them have been published in the last 15, 20 years. So they're old. So because he has an excerpt from them, I'm like, why are all these citations from the 80s? Like, because, and the thing is, the things he uses a citation, it's just like at one point I said, I don't know, men murder other men as, because they're in competition for women. And like biologically, like evolutionarily, they were. Okay, but then it said but the explanation of why men only rape women and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that doesn't even that's not even true. Like, this is demonstrably false things. This is a paper that he's citing. It's not things he actually wrote. Anyways, so he clarified that he didn't mean that there should be like government enforced monogamy, which is kind of how that sounds in a way. So, okay, fair, we got to give him that because he was very clear on that. But And he also specifically said things like, it doesn't mean that there should be, that men should feel entitled to sex, or that there should be enforced monogamy. I'm just saying it's an effective tool. Like, he always does that shit. He's like that annoying guy in undergrad. He's always like, well, you didn't specify that when you said blue, you really meant this kind of wavelength and not that one. Like, fuck off.
Depends on what your definition
Do you know what I mean,
is.
Yes, he's that guy. He's that guy.
Yeah.
Because you might misinterpret me.
The interesting thing
But he feels so hard done by, like, everyone's misinterpreting my words on purpose. Like, yeah, what
You could be more distinct.
You are smart enough to know that what you're saying is going, if you want to say something like that, you got to be really clear. And fine, I'll let you clarify, but I still find your argument tenuous at best.
Yeah. I find even the clarified argument weak.
Yes, agreed.
So
it is not as extreme as you might think by just naively hearing the straight up. But it's still like
it's still an awful argument.
I still don't.
Yeah.
Like just what I'm thinking is that it almost sounds like, I haven't gotten into Doug full in, but it almost sounds like he read one of the little tidbits of evidence that some of these guys are motivated by the incel movement and thought, how do you fix that? It's like, I know, we'll get them sex, and then cloaked it in.
He just says whatever.
Language.
He just I don't know, like the Schiff article says. He says he passes conjecture off as fact.
Yeah,
and apparently he was doing that in his lectures all the time, and it's just.
It was already bothersome then.
Yeah,
I have been listening to a show called Media Indigena the last few months, and they recently had a 2-part episode where they discussed what they called settler sexuality, and the person who was discussing it her name is Kim Tallbear, and she discussed the idea like that indigenous people often didn't have the Western European settler type ideas about monogamy and even the family structures that we imagine as the norm. It weren't the way indigenous people did family, and how to me, in much of her work and many of the things she said, kind of like contradicts this idea that monogamy automatically is the better way to look at the world and like approach relationships and families.
But did those societies have more violence?
Well, it's hard to measure that.
I guess I'm just saying, because Peterson says that we evolved in culture in societies where only a small subset of males got to reproduce, but almost all females got to reproduce, which is why men exclusively have this. This is what he says, just to be clear. Right. This is why men exclusively have more aggression than women, because women are all like, cool, I get to have a baby no matter what, but only a small subset of men do, so which makes them very competitive. Whereas monogamy would be like, oh, like I'm guaranteed it's all good. And I agree. It's an argument. I need a lot of evidence and not just a 20-year-old paper with crappy citations that are easily refuted to believe that. But, and again, it's a lot of, well, I didn't say it was a good idea to do it. I just said it could work. I just said it's effective, not that we should do it. Like, fuck off.
Well, part of my thought is that he hasn't demonstrated that it could work.
No.
Right? Like with any kind of anything other than conjecture.
Well, which the problem is I haven't read enough. I honestly don't know enough about Jordan Peterson to really comment, but it just seems like he's seeing all this through this just tunnel vision, westernized viewpoint, and it's like, you're way out of your fucking wheelhouse here, buddy. Like, and I've heard this argument in other, only high status males get to, but if you look at enough other cultures, it's not true.
Yeah. It's just factually incorrect.
It's not true. I mean, there's, I can't remember specifically. It's in one of my anthropology textbooks, but in Tibet, there's actually one of the rare cases of, can't remember.
Matriarchal? Is that what you're thinking?
Sort of. It's like, one husband, multiple wives, flip it.
Right.
Why? Because it's a case of being that high up in the mountain range. It's a case of.
Yeah, I've read the same thing.
It was just a simple case of, it was numbers. There was more
men than women.
More men than women. So it became a case of, it was like, reverse patriarchy.
Right.
And, they made it work.
Right.
Heaven forbid.
And the thing is there's other things saying how and why our concept of marriage has evolved. And for the most part, it was about, mostly about lineage and property.
Yeah. Wasn't it like marrying your daughter off often transferred your property to, or transferred her husband's property to your family, or
it kind of
like
depends, because there's different things. There's and it's been so long since I've read it. I'm kind of
wasn't that the goats and the cow thing?
Well, there's
the dowry.
Well, there's dowry, and then there's dowry, and there's bride wealth. But that's getting more off into the weeds. But like, it's just a case of when you get married and it's just one-on-one. There's a direct line of succession. Like, okay, I am married to you. These children are definitely mine. They get my property when I die. And, there's no question. In theory, there shouldn't be any fighting, but European history tells you that's not true. But, that's the basic principle of how our concept of marriage kind of evolved. I mean, I've also heard other things where it's like, when you get married, you create a workforce, because now your spouse's family is now not necessarily indebted to you, but you now have a workforce that both sides of the family can now, harvest the fields, and vice versa. Like, there's all these additional things that get thrown into the mix. And that's a very westernized version, I think, of why. Like, it's not.
So ultimately, like, the claim that monogamy as we have it in our culture reduces male violence is not a one-to-one conversion by any stretch.
So. No, I don't think so.
Like, even if it were a true thing, and I'm not convinced it is in any sense, it certainly isn't as straightforward as it seems to have been implied.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, is it's I think a lot of it depends on culture to culture to culture and history to history. Like, just this whitewashing is, I think, just lazy and not really understanding.
That was often that was kind of my comment in a lot of Twitter conversations, was like, I think Jordan Peterson's Western settler bias is demonstrating a lot of his viewpoints here. Like, he's really very one-sided and doesn't recognize much from other.
He's just got it.
Yeah. He doesn't really recognize other cultures that did things differently.
Because he's not an anthropologist. He's not a sociologist.
One of the things, he was interviewed by, and we'll stop talking about Jordan Peterson soon.
It's so hard.
One of the things that he said, he was being interviewed on stage by Dave Rubin about the enforced monogamy statement. And one of the things that he said, he scoffs and says, well, the people, it's certainly not this ridiculous thing that all the leftists think that I meant, as though he used a term that was clear to everybody. And that everybody should know what he meant. And we're just taking him out of context on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Except the thing he said is this kind of obscure anthropological reference.
Technical, academic term.
Nobody's going to just automatically know that.
Do you know what the medical term for miscarriage is? Spontaneous abortion. And yet you don't go to your doctor and say, oh, you've had a spontaneous abortion. Nobody said, people don't use those words to lay people because it's obviously going to be misunderstood.
It was spontaneous,
But that's actually what it's called. I'm just saying, as an example.
You don't use technical jargon.
If you go to the doctor, his doctor's not going to say that to you because it's going to upset you.
Do you also get those in Vegas?
What?
Spontaneous abortions. Like same, is it across the street?
Quickie
from the White
wedding,
Chapel?
spontaneous abortion.
Yeah, see? No?
A miscarriage is when it's not
Yes.
an intentional
No.
caused thing. It's your body rejecting an embryo or a fetus.
Yes, it's very
Sorry,
much.
no.
So the answer
Sure, it
is
happens
no.
in Las Vegas, but I'm sure it happens everywhere else too.
Yeah.
So I think I'm about played out on Jordan Peterson today.
Well, so I will say though he's playing Connexus here in town actually, which
I just Googled it,
which is a
myself.
large
I'm
venue.
so glad you're promoting this, Dave.
I'm just saying I'm surprised how large of a venue he's getting.
But there's a really big lawn
it'll
out
fill
front.
it.
It will fill it.
So we should be going there just to identify all the people that we don't want to associate with.
Yeah,
just kidding.
that's about it.
I'm pretty much a social recluse as is.
Yeah, I guess.
So.
So just adding to the list. That's like double checking, making sure they're there.
People have a right to say whatever, I guess.
How many women and people of color do you think will go to this?
Oh, not very many.
No.
There'll be some women. No, you know what? There are a lot of really conservative, like Christian women in
That's
town.
true. That's
there are quite
true.
a few. Yeah.
And he does talk bad about. Well, he does refuse to use trans people's pronouns, so
Yeah.
that would appeal to that base.
It would. Yeah.
And just a little bit of spitefulness. I've heard some online articles stopped referring to him with gendered pronouns.
Oh, is that right?
Yep, just their article, their history, not his or.
I want to acknowledge that Mike, former crew member of the show, Mike had a great point that we should start maybe not talking about Jordan Peterson and more or less just taking his ideas, pointing out why this idea as being spread is wrong without actually referencing this person who's spreading it.
That's not a bad idea.
I think it speaks to, we had the talking about people kind of conversation. And there is something to the idea that you can take an idea, something somebody says, and just say, here's this idea that was said.
Yeah.
And this is why it's wrong.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
He
other
who shall
than
not be named.
You shall not be named. That's
I don't
right.
know. I something rubs me
problem
the
is
wrong way about
he's-
that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I mean,
No.
I don't know if it's a proper argument, but the thing is Lord Voldemort has been.
You said the name.
He's been elevated to some sort of
Like pseudo celebrity status.
pseudo celebrity. So it's almost already gone beyond attacking his ideas. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Because like that's just it. Is everyone's lining up for a photo op, and he like reading that one article is talking about his new almost costume he wears when he.
I hate how good his suits are.
Yeah, he comes.
I
the-
hate that.
These
I
tailored.
love a nice suit. I don't wear them, but I love the look of a nice suit, and that man makes me mad.
Okay, you're
He's
getting. You
impeccably-
need to stop worrying about Jordan Peterson and maybe just thinking about ideas here. I don't like being
Yeah, this
told
is
what I
for
can and
you,
can't
yeah,
say,
yeah.
but I mean, you need to. That's
the
not
man-
his big
I
problem.
don't
That's
like
not the
that
big problem.
he wears a nice suit and he wrecks it.
He's an asshole, but he's impeccably dressed.
He is. Those are nice
Well,
fucking
hey,
suits.
that Yanni guy looked really good. And he's
Just think for a second, though.
spouting garbage. But
When you talk about bad people in nice suits and how often when the devil is portrayed in a suit.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, all
And
politicians
then
wear
you have
suits.
Trump, who has
All
wears just a
politicians
shitty
wear
suit too.
Which
I'm sure
I
he thinks he looks amazing.
Oh,
I hate the fact that all politicians have to dress like that. I mean, that's it's just stupid. But anyway,
I agree.
that's another topic.
I hate uniforms.
Yeah, like there's too much of it.
Yeah,
let's face facts. Everything has its own
well,
form of
that's the
uniform.
problem.
To a point, yeah.
I think that's the problem. I hate uniforms.
There's uniforms. There's
gotta-
uniforms. Metalheads have uniforms.
Put on my monkey
Yeah, they
suit at
do.
work and
But isn't like jeans and a t-shirt a uniform that implies this is I'm not working right now and I'm relaxed right now. This is it's signaling to other
Apparently-
primates exactly what's going on with you
apparently
today.
it implies that I am a farmer that is just
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, your uniform is confusing.
No, but I do think that like
Cory's confusing. He's an intellectual redneck.
sorry to bring up
He discusses like all these social justice warrior stuff, and then I'll have a Canadian and I'll eat a steak. And I'm going to wear my jeans and my shirt, and that's it. It's a walking contradiction.
But I think that's why you get like Muslim women defending wearing hijab, right? Because that's the thing that indicates to the rest of the world, this is what I am. I believe in this. Like somebody wearing a cross necklace or whatever. You're signaling to others your culture, your belief. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's fine, but I think in a situation with politicians, it's a little different because it's like an expectation of a job that really doesn't need to be there. Like it doesn't have any real value besides showing some kind of social dominance or like social put togetherness.
We're social animals, man.
But that's what I mean. Like if I show up and I can do the job in any outfit, like I should be allowed to. Is what
that should be true of any job.
Could you see Barack Obama giving a speech in a Tupac T-shirt?
I'd love it.
That would be fantastic.
I'd be all over it.
I would laugh my ass off. But you know what I'm saying.
It's almost like you don't take them seriously because they're all wearing suits. Like, you know what I mean? Like if they had some individuality about them, and maybe I would actually like
mean something,
Yeah. But anyway.
But he wore a blue tie versus a red tie. So.
That's, Trump's ties are really long, so that makes it different.
All right. Has anybody got any final points? We kind of strayed right from the dark web right into Jordan Peterson. Like we didn't spend hardly any time on the dark web at all.
He even be beating Ben Shapiro these days in significance. So
the dark web is too varied a set of individuals. I mean, the only the thing that's linking them together, that tenuousness, is just their lack of mainstream. I think.
I don't even know about that.
No, but they have big followings, but they're not. Mainstream. They're not on TV. They're not
just under the mainstream.
I mean, they could because they have that kind of audience.
Yeah.
But they're, like my mom's never heard of Joe Rogan, but she's heard of whatever, some newscaster on NBC who has exactly as many viewers as Joe Rogan. Right. Like that's what this is. It's just this weird sort of blind spot in the media for this group.
As
of people.
much as. Like Sam Harris is like almost a household name among atheists.
Yeah.
That's where it ends.
That's where it ends. Yeah.
Like the real world doesn't really know who he is.
Nobody can sell out theaters across the continent and across the world.
If there's anything that seems to tie them together, it's the idea that they're saying the thing that is perceived as unpopular.
Well, they're not afraid to say, or whatever. They're willing to say something even if it costs them a reputation or whatever, even if it has a social cost to it.
Because
which interestingly enough doesn't cost them anything socially.
It costs certain things, but it gains them other things, right?
I think I agree with that.
There's a give and take.
Like,
no, that's fair.
Like, for example, Anne Hersey Ali is very anti-Muslim as far as I understand her viewpoint.
She's quite conservative in a number of ways.
Yeah. So
she grew up in a Muslim country and had her clitoris cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's anti-Muslim.
Yeah.
She's an atheist. But all of us don't agree with being a Muslim. We're all atheists. What? Yeah. I really love that woman. I don't want to get into this.
Yeah, but she's went right off from like Muslim to atheist to lock them all out kind of viewpoint.
Yeah,
we can put a pin in that for another day.
There's a number of things about Ayaan Hirsi Ali or Majid Nawaz or Ben Shapiro. The thing that I find really locks them all together is that they are very anti-left, despite some of them identifying as kind of left. They
usually identify themselves as classical liberals.
Yeah, they spend an inordinate amount of time attacking the left. When, honestly, the left is right now just pissing in the wind quite often because there's no power on the left.
Well, I think that's that's also a topic for another day. I think that's the problem is because the left has been. There's, the whole pejorative of social justice warrior, and there's some whack jobs in that category. And I think, that's the problem, is that they're a smaller percentage, but they're seen as the bigger percentage. No one wants to be associated with those fucking
The loudest voices.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where it is they don't want to be with those crazies. We're the classical liberals. We're, you know, the far left and the far right, and, you know.
Right, yeah, and we're the rational centrists.
Yeah.
Who have no tribe and have no biases.
Yeah. we're intellectually pure.
Which is now the
I
title
don't
of
think
this
that's
segment.
a fair, anyways, characterization. But anyways, whatever. I don't think that's fair.